Good morning, I'm Cindy Parker, a member of the Board of Trustees, and I'm happy to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Brunswick, Maine. Today is Sunday, May 30th, 2021, and the service is led by our interim minister, Reverend Justine Sullivan. This week we celebrate Memorial Day, a solemn reminder of those who have been lost on the battlefield. At the end of the Civil War, the country was reeling from the aftermath, 620,000 dead. A number of communities had started decorating graves of fallen soldiers. President Lincoln saw this as an opportunity to bring the entire country together as one community, and he named Decoration Day, which would become Memorial Day, as a time for honoring the war dead to mend what had been torn asunder. Today we'll have music from Jud Caswell, the UUCB Hymn Singers, and Trillium. Our charity with Soul for the month of May is Habitat for Humanity. Please give generously. And finally, I'm asked to read the entire warrant for our upcoming annual meeting, so please bear with me. The Unitarian Universalist Church of Brunswick hereby notifies all current members to attend a congregational meeting to be held online via Zoom conference on the 13th of June 2021 at 11 a.m. to consider and act on the following articles. 1. To approve the minutes of the annual congregational meeting of June 7th, 2020, January 21st, 2021, and April 18th, 2021. And 2. To approve the board's recommended budget for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. And 3. To receive the nominating committee's report and elect trustees for open seats, church officers, moderating and nominating committees for 2021 to 2022. And 4. To consider any other business as appropriate and agreed to by the assembled congregation. This notice will be posted in the weekly newsletter this week at UUCB for 2 weeks prior to the meeting, and the warrant will be read as part of the virtual church services for 2 Sundays prior to the meeting. And now, please enjoy the service.
Good morning. Our opening words this morning are by the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd. Let's not go building new walls around our hearts. We have already enough that keeps us from each other, enough that keeps us from ourselves and the knowing of all that we have done, all that has been done to us and for us. The losses we sustained, the love we avoided, the life we held too tight. For this hour, we practice showing up with a willingness to see, to be seen, to remember ourselves whole and still becoming better, to believe it is okay to not be okay, that we are loved even when we feel unlovable, that we belong even when the ground comes out from under us, to be for each other a surprising generosity, a sudden sweetness, a sign of hope to start a new day. Together we can be this brave. Come, let us worship together and let us sing together our opening song, hymn number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and rain go by. By faith made strong, the rafters withstand the battering of the storm. This heart softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into our shine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep it out and hold love in.
Hello and good morning. My name is Toben, and I serve as your Director of Religious Exploration. Today we are talking about Memorial Day, which is a time when we think about people that we've had to say goodbye to. So I have a story for you all about saying goodbye.
Saying Goodbye, a story about learning to let go, written by Lisa Cooper and illustrated by Sigrid Wharton and Sherry Lundgren. Some goodbyes can be very big, or even very small. You can say them if you're short, you can say them if you're tall. You can write the word on a special card to show how much you care. You could say goodbye on the phone, or even write it in the air. We say goodbye to friends and to people in the street. We say goodbye to old clothes and to shoes too small for our feet. When we say goodbye to little things, it shouldn't hurt at all. But it's hard to let go of things we love from days when we were small. Some goodbyes are exciting, like when the year is done. Then it's time to do different things and have a lot of fun. People say the word goodbye when they go somewhere new. New places mean new friends to find and fun adventures just for you. But sometimes, goodbyes can make us feel unhappy. They can even make us sad. And sometimes goodbyes could make us cry, or even make us mad. When those we love must leave us, it's sometimes hard to say that we'll miss them very much. It really hurts that they can't stay. So sometimes when someone special leaves, it's just what they need to do. But they will be feeling just as sad inside when they think about leaving you. Goodbyes are not always forever, though, and if we wait and see, sometimes things work out just fine the way they're meant to be. Goodbyes are around us everywhere. No one is to blame. Love just doesn't disappear when things can't stay the same. So when someone special leaves, those memories will always stay. And your heart will always remember what they meant to you each day. Just think of that person, time or place, and you will feel so very glad. that you felt the way you did and you remembered what you had.
And now let us enter into a time of meditation and prayer. I offer these words by Adrienne Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. And now let us breathe together in the stillness of this moment of quiet.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Hi, my name is Pat Moore, and I'm here to do the reading for Memorial Day 2021. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in Maryland in 1818. After escaping from slavery in Maryland, he became a national leader of the abolitionist movement in Massachusetts and New York, becoming famous for his oratory and incisive anti-slavery writings. This piece by historian Heather Cox Richardson was published this week on May 24th and is a wonderful introduction to the significance of this man, Frederick Douglass, in our U.S. history. Frederick Douglass wrote his autobiography 3 times, but to protect the people who helped him run away from enslavement, he did not explain how he had managed to get away until the last virgin. Douglass escaped from slavery in Baltimore, Maryland in 1838. In his 20 years of life, he had had a series of masters, some kind, some harsh, and one who almost killed him. But by 1838, he was a skilled worker in the local shipyards, earning good money for his master and enjoying a measure of freedom as well as protection. He had good friends in the area and had fallen in love with a woman who would become his wife. It was enslavement, but within that existence, it was a pretty good position. His peers in the cotton fields of the Deep South were beaten like animals, their deaths by violence unremarkable. Douglass himself had come close to being sold down the river, a term that referred to slave convoys that traveled down the Mississippi River from older, worn-out lands in the east to fresh, raw lands in Mississippi and Louisiana. And he knew that being forced to labor on a plantation in the Deep South would kill him. His relative safe position would have been enough for a lot of people. They would have thanked God for their blessings and stayed put. In 1838, Frederick Douglass was no different than they were, an unknown slave, hoping to get through each day. Like them, he might have accepted his conditions and disappeared into the past, leaving the status quo unchanged. But he refused. His scheme for escaping to freedom was ridiculously easy. In the days of slavery, free black sailors carried documents with them to prove to Southern authorities that they were free, so they could move from northern and foreign ports to southern ports without being detained. These were the days before photos, so officials described men listed on the free papers as they saw them, his color, distinguishing marks, scars. Douglass worked in shipyards and had met a sailor whose free papers might cover Douglass, if the white official who looked at them didn't look too closely. Risking his own freedom, that sailor lent Douglass his papers. To escape from slavery, all Douglass had to do was board a train. That's it. He just had to step on a train. If he were lucky and the railroad conductor didn't catch him and no one recognized him and called him out, he could be free. But if he were caught, he would be sold down the river, almost certainly to his death. To me, Douglass's decision to step aboard that train is everything. How many of us would have taken that risk? Especially knowing that even in the best case, success would mean trying to build a new life far away from everyone we had ever known. Douglass's step was such a little one, such an easy one, except that it meant the difference between life and death. The difference between being forgotten, enslaved shipyard worker and the great Frederick Douglass, who went on to become a powerful voice for American liberty. Tomorrow, my students will graduate, and every year students ask me if I have any advice for them as they leave college or university, advice I wish I had had at their age. The answer is yes. After all these years of living and studying history, I have one piece of advice. When the day comes that you have to choose between what is just good enough and what is right, find the courage to step on the train.
Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. We are many textures, we are many colors, each one different from the other, but we are entwined with one another in one great tapestry. Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. weave us together, weave us together, together in love. A moment ago, still we did not know our unity, only diversity. The love in me greets the love in you, in one great family. Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love.
It's Memorial Day, a long weekend, the beginning of the summer season, traffic jams, tourists. Of course, in this pandemic time, a recent experience I had of a traffic jam actually felt hopeful, like a return to something like normal. But maybe we have lost track of the real meaning of and the reason for Memorial Day. 620,000 dead at the end of the Civil War. That's about 2.5% of the total population who were lost in that war. If that were to happen today with our current population, that would be over 6 million people gone. It was during and just after the Civil War that the United States created our first national cemeteries, including the Arlington National Cemetery. The beginning of the idea that these folks who died belonged to all of us, served and died for all of us, and so they should be buried in a public cemetery at public expense and in a way that would allow their sacrifice to be acknowledged by all. 1 out of 4 soldiers who went off to fight in the Civil War never returned. And because regiments were local, there were towns that lost scores and scores of their young men. In some cases, all the men in a family. Imagine that kind of loss. Many more soldiers and civilians injured or sick. Home and farms and businesses destroyed. The country, the entire country devastated. And we did it to each other. For very good reasons. Perhaps unavoidably, we went to war. To end slavery, to preserve the Union, but at the end, though one side was deemed victorious and the Union preserved, the fabric of society was torn asunder, literally ripped apart. And some might say we still haven't recovered, still haven't fully healed, still haven't mended what was broken. But at the end of the war between the states, we had to try to come back together as one community, as one nation. And the federal government did lots of things. The North sent troops into the South to try and rebuild, to try and safeguard the rights of the now former slaves. And that period of Reconstruction is a topic worthy of deep exploration. Some might say that the wounds we are experiencing today in communities of color have their origins in the actions taken during and at the end of the Civil War. In a few towns, perhaps those that had experienced the greatest loss of life during the war, in those towns folks began decorating the graves of soldiers who had died. They called it Decoration Day. And in May of 1868, it was declared a national day of honoring the dead of the Civil War. And at the first National Decoration Day on May 30th, 1868, former Union General and then U.S. Congressman and future President James Garfield made a speech at the Arlington National Cemetery, after which nearly 5,000 participants decorated the graves of 20,000 war dead with flowers and wreaths. What a simple and yet beautiful and sacred act. Decorating the graves of soldiers, some known to them, many more, I'm certain, not known to them, some completely unknown, as record-keeping in that time and in the face of such carnage was often incomplete. The people gathered on that day, May 30th, 1868, in community to mourn the loss of all their beloveds, to cry together, to offer one another consolation, to honor those who had made the ultimate sacrifice, and to express the fervent prayer and hope that such sacrifice would never be needed again. And every year since that time, people have gathered in cemeteries and at war monuments all around the country to honor those who have died in battle. Frederick Douglass, the formerly enslaved person that Pat read about in the piece by Heather Cox Richardson, got himself free. And he could have just kept his head down after the war, lived his life, but he continued to speak out, reminding folks to resist the urge to rewrite history, to suggest an equivalence of both sides. Douglass was a brilliant writer and orator, and he was often called upon to speak, especially at Decoration Day remembrances at what would later become Memorial Day. I'm going to share with you in its entirety a short and brilliant piece that Douglass delivered on Decoration Day on May 30th, 1871, 150 years ago today, at the Arlington National Cemetery, at the tomb of the unknown soldier, Frederick Douglass. Friends and fellow citizens, tarry here for a moment. My words shall be few and simple. The solemn rites of this hour and place call for no lengthened speech. There is, in the very air of this resting ground of the unknown dead, a silent, subtle, and all-pervading eloquence, far more touching, impressive, and thrilling than living lips have ever uttered. Into the measureless depths of every loyal soul, it is now whispering lessons of all that is precious, priceless, holiest, and most enduring in human existence. Dark and sad will be the hour to this nation when it forgets to pay graceful homage to its greatest benefactors. The offering we bring today is due alike to the patriot soldiers dead and their noble comrades who still live. For whether living or dead, whether in time or eternity, the loyal soldiers who imperiled all for country and freedom are one and inseparable. Those unknown heroes, whose whitened bones have been piously gathered here, and whose green graves we now strew with sweet and beautiful flowers, choice emblems alike of pure hearts and brave spirits, reached in their glorious career that last highest point of nobleness, beyond which human power cannot go. They died for their country. No loftier tribute can be paid to the most illustrious of all the benefactors of mankind than we pay to these unrecognized soldiers when we write above their graves this shining epitaph. When the dark and vengeful spirit of slavery, always ambitious, preferring to rule in hell than to serve in heaven, fired the Southern heart and stirred all the malign elements of discord when our great republic, the hope of freedom and self-government throughout the world, had reached the point of supreme peril, when the union of these states was torn and rent asunder at the center, and the armies of a gigantic rebellion came forth with broad blades and bloody hands to destroy the very foundations of American society. The unknown braves who flung themselves into the yawning chasm where cannon roared and bullets whistled, fought and fell. They died for their country. We are sometimes asked in the name of patriotism to forget the merits of this fearful struggle and to remember with equal admiration those who struck at the nation's life and those who struck to save it, those who fought for slavery and those who fought for liberty and justice. I am no minister of malice. I would not strike the fallen. I would not repel the repentant. But may my right hand forget her cunning and my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, if I forget the difference between the parties to that terrible, protracted, and bloody conflict. If we ought to forget a war which has filled our land with widows and orphans, which has made stumps of men of the very flower of our youth, which has sent them on the journey of life, armless, legless, maimed, and mutilated, which has piled up a debt heavier than a mountain of gold, swept uncounted thousands of men into bloody graves, and planted agony at 1,000,000 hearthstones, I say, if this war is to be forgotten, I ask, in the name of all things sacred, what shall men remember? The essence and significance of our devotions here today are not to be found in the fact that the men whose remains fill these graves were brave in battle. If we met simply to show our sense of bravery, we should find enough on both sides to kindle admiration. In the raging storm of fire and blood, in the fierce torrent of shot and shell, of sword and bayonet, whether on foot or on horse, unflinching courage marked the rebel not less than the loyal soldier. But we are not here to applaud manly courage, save as it has been displayed in a noble cause. We must never forget that victory to the rebellion meant death to the republic. We must never forget that the loyal soldiers who rest beneath this sod flung themselves between the nation and the nation's destroyers. If today we have a country not boiling in an agony of blood like France, if now we have a united country no longer cursed by the hell-black system of human bondage, if the American name is no longer a byword and a hissing to a mocking earth, if the star-spangled banner floats over free American citizens in every quarter of the land, and our country has before it a long and glorious career of justice, liberty, and civilization, we are indebted to the unselfish devotion of the noble army who rest in these honored graves all around us. From Frederick Douglass, 150 years ago today. President Lincoln made the very difficult decision to go to war. He saw no other way to preserve the Union. 620,000 dead, at least. Each of them worthy of mourning, each of them humans with inherent worth and dignity. But even though we can mourn every life lost, every father, son, husband, brother, sibling, friend, beloved, let us not suggest that both sides were fighting for a noble cause. As Douglass writes, we are not here to applaud manly courage, save as it has been displayed in a noble cause. President Lincoln understood the power of ritual, and he called the nation together and said, "We must mourn all our dead." Frederick Douglass said, "Yes, we must mourn all our dead, but let's not let what they were fighting for be one of the casualties of that war." In our effort to move on, let's not fail to lift up and remember always the very principles that brave people have died protecting. I think of this each time I see the seemingly endless footage of the insurrectionists who attacked our Capitol on January 6th. Theirs was not a noble cause. And to compare their attack to protests that have been held in the name of freedom or in response to some egregious act of violence is an insult to all who have fought, marched, died for justice. We deserve better, my friends, and certainly our soldiers, sailors, and Marines, all who risk everything in the fight for justice, deserve better. May it be so. Our closing words are by L.R. Nost. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is in you. Go in peace and love. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.